I've got some questions to go through. Dan French, here we are. I got to meet you last week, and we are talking about having this show and bringing you on. And it's really exciting because we were just mentioning then, like, what's happening with Agentic, what's happening with what you're seeing at Consider Solutions, and yeah, I guess a bit of an introduction to what you're doing and what you're seeing in the market, but also just genuine viewpoint, direction, how you see in the world with AI, and what's your kind of how you interpreting it all.
Tom, it was a good conversation we had. Yeah, so I mean, what I'm trying to do and my business is trying to do is help big companies sort of streamline their business processes, and obviously a big part of that is how you digitize and automate. Now, you'd have to be under a rock for the past few years not to realize that there's been massive focus on AI, but specifically generative AI for the past 2.5, 3 years. And one of the interesting observations, and it isn't new with this cycle, is that all of a sudden the new technology, which was generative AI up until about 3 months ago when it became agentic AI, the new thing becomes the answer to every problem. And it's madness, because you have to start with what problem you're trying to fix before you worry about what the tools are. And AI in general, whether it's analytical AI, generative AI, causal AI, agentic AI, they're all tools in the toolbox, but they aren't the whole toolbox, right? There's other tools. There's tools we've used for years which are still really applicable. And I find it I think it's tough for the enterprise customers to kind of work out to see the wood for the trees, because they're being told basically everything is now AI. That's not true.
It's a big, like I was saying this earlier, like a big lofty vision of what AI can do and what it can't do, and there's a lot of things going around like AI hype and different tools, and I'm seeing it a lot, man. Like, what actually the impact you can get from it is very different to what people are seeing with it. So I think it's I still don't know what to think of agentic AI at the moment, to be honest.
No, I tend to agree. I mean the big thing that has been even before you get to agentic, one of the big challenges has been this idea that you keep reading that AI is designed to automate repetitive tasks. That's nonsense. AI, that's what predictive. That's what the kind of the classical procedural logic was about. It's what we used RPA for. It's what ERP systems. It's just automation. It's if then else stuff. AI is about probabilistic stuff. Now, and so it astonishes me when people say, "Oh well, AI is going to take 80% of the workforce out." Not a chance. Because not when you look at the work of any business, some of the tasks are repetitive and simple, and they can be automated using classical techniques. Some of the tasks do benefit from a probabilistic approach, which is a classic use case for AI. But the problem is typically don't just throw AI at the problem and say, okay, we won't have any human intervention, because when you're talking about probabilities, somebody's got to make the ultimate judgment. But then agentic, now we're talking about agents, which are all probabilistic, linked together in an enterprise workflow. Oh, that's interesting. So how's that going to work when the end result is paying out money, right? And you've got 90% probability 10 times in a row with no human intervention. The chances are that at the end of that, you've got 50% chance of paying out the wrong money to the wrong people. But that's not to say it's still a powerful technology, but we keep on. My frustration is we allow these voices of complete excitement and naivety to tell us that it's changed the world as we know it, and it hasn't. It's significant, but the world hasn't.
Do you think there will come a time when it does turn on its head, like something that will happen, like a big shift?
Well, you never say never, do you? But it all depends on how far. What does on its head mean relative to where we are now? I mean, throughout the technological revolution, we've always been told that in 15 years' time, we're going to automate all of these jobs out, and we never have done. Now, maybe this time we will, but it won't be AI doing it because it doesn't make sense. You can't, I mean, a lot of the stuff we do is deterministic. It isn't probabilistic, right? So it's about choosing what problems are we trying to solve and what are the best tools in the toolbox to fix them. And in any process, some of them are going to require a human answer. Some are going to require a relationship, sort of an emotional intelligence answer. Some are going to require a probabilistic ones, and some are going to require a deterministic. And it's, that's cool. And it'll all fit together. But the idea that every step is going to be probabilistic, I think, doesn't even pass the basic smell test.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like I always think, man, like when you look at these things, Dan, and I'd be curious to see if you think the same way. You kind of touched on it there. I know people that are very savvy on the development side, that are developers, and I know people that are savvy on the business side, like operationally, and they don't necessarily understand the tech very well, but they are part of teams, businesses that deliver great end user experiences or products or physical products or goods or whatever. It always interests me how a business owner I knew, a friend, he was explaining, oh, we've got to use, and I'm sure you've heard a similar conversation, and I've heard it multiple times. This is one just recently. We've got to use AI. We've got to use AI. And you think, well, that's interesting because I don't think of it that way. I think, what's the problem I've got to solve and work backwards and see what the right technology. And I think there's still a time and place for automation. Like, I remember when the trifectas, Kieran Gilmore, a great person, that walked me through it, like Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere, and UiPath. And it's interesting to see what's happening with them at the moment as they're making a shift. But what do you think? Like how people have this perception that AI is like a seasoning on a steak or something.
Yeah, but you make a great point. I mean, those RPA technologies, the underlying technology is still valid,
Yeah.
and we will continue to use that. It won't necessarily be those vendors, but we'll continue to do it. But it's interesting what you say about the AI thing. I had a customer call me up at the beginning of the Gen AI wave, and he said, "I must talk to you." And I said,
When's
"Okay."
that
And
like? Beginning of
he said,
2023, end of 2022?
it was probably 2 years ago. So he said to me, "Can you help me? I've got to build an AI strategy." I said, "Why do you want an AI strategy?" He said, "Because the board have asked me for an AI strategy." I said, "Okay. Well, why do they want one?" He goes, "Well, I don't know. I mean, it's obvious." I said, "Why is it obvious?" I said, unless you're
Yeah.
selling AI as a product, you don't
Yeah.
need an AI strategy. You only need a strategy for what your business is. Otherwise, it's like having a strategy for tables or a strategy for Excel. I mean, it doesn't make sense. What you want to do is have a strategy for your business about what it is you're selling to who and how that product gets made. And then those are the strategies you want. And then in that, as you say, you've got to solve certain problems. You've got to find out what are the barriers to success and what are the
Yeah.
opportunities for greater success. How do we make that happen? And some of it relates to technology. But once you get to the technology, it's still not all AI. It's in which type of technology fits best. But you're right. I think we have been trained to believe that everything is all encompassing. The world is a Venn diagram of just one big circle.
That's a good way of looking at it. Like just you can throw anything at it because I think it's someone was saying to me, Dan, how it was on LinkedIn. Someone wasn't saying to me, it was on a LinkedIn post, and it was saying how uh like just like in finance and in investments, it can compound, right? And your money can compound through an index or whatever. And this isn't financial; it's just to give a picture. And similar thing can happen with technology. Like you can get something right and it can compound, but you can also get things very wrong and it can compound. And there was a point being
Absolutely.
made. I think I said this to Dan Duncan, and he was saying like how a company is saving 250 grand, but this new technology is costing them 350 grand. And it's like, well, it's actually costing you an extra 100 grand then, isn't it? It's like, you're not making any savings. Like, and it's those conversations that really make me question, like, how people, how public sector, how businesses, how local communities look at this technology and why they think it's bigger or better than what it is. I don't know.
Well, it's the fear of missing out, isn't it? It's a human thing to worry, and I mean, it's a confidence issue. If you've got
Mm,
anxiety about your world, and somebody tells you a big thing's happening, and somebody tells you if you don't understand it, you might be out of business or out of a job. That's where the FOMO thing comes from. And people go, oh, I better start doing something. I better do anything to be in on this bus. But there's been very few buses which has been important to get onto at the very first time the three-wheeled bus turns up. It's like there is no evidence. That whole idea of first mover advantage never even was proven out. And most in industry, most of the big successes in business have never been first movers. They've been followers. They watch the early movers make all the mistakes, and then they get it right. And why would it be any different with the application of technology? But I think this fear of missing out thing is a big part of what goes on, and I think it makes people feel comfortable and reassured to say, "Oh, we're investing in AI because nobody's going to argue with them," and it makes you sound like if you're foresighted and you're looking to the future. It's great, but as you say, then you suddenly say, "How much are you investing?" I mean, I read a report today that said something like, for the first time, that there's more AI projects being cancelled now than are being started. And again, that's unfortunate, and that isn't right either. It's just that people started doing projects which you haven't thought through properly. That's not to say, it's absolutely not to say that AI is not an amazing technology. It's been with us for a long time, and it's constantly evolving, and it's a wonderful thing, but it's not everything. And I think that's the only bit that's where I differ from quite a lot of people who think it's the only
thing. It's definitely not. And it makes you think, because you're know is probably better than what I'm saying, but the internet wave, like you look at what happened I was a kid at the time, but like the 2000 bubble and like the bubble of internet, and I was saying this earlier, there was a funny headline that you can find online very quickly, it's New York Times, that says it's like some famous mathematician or someone saying the internet's just a fad, and that was in like 1997, like no one's going to want the internet. And there was a similar one with Henry Ford, like who would want that scrap of metal driving you around and look around it's what drives a lot of deliver everything. And it does make me think, like, to your good point there, Dan, things are failing, right? But where there'll be, you look at everyone probably thinking internet companies are failing in the bubble burst, in the dot-com burst, and there'll be a similar wave happening. But now there's more internet companies than ever before. Like, they're spurring of all sizes, from companies doing 50 grand a year, a side gig, right through to the biggest publicly traded system integrators like a ServiceNow. So it makes you think that's going to happen with AI, I reckon. What do you think?
Yeah, and it will. But what's interesting about it is they also said about the internet, it will destroy employment. It'll destroy jobs. You won't need jobs, because everything's going to be disintermediated. Remember all that? No disintermediated with no middle people. It's going to, but of course it hasn't. There is no less employment today than there was when the internet started. So my point about AI, it's going to be the same. Now, it's not to say that AI will be embedded in every company, and frankly, it already is. Because what business doesn't use AI enabled? You can't even use Google now without getting generative AI. The first results are the generative AI results. So not if you're using any technology today, you are using AI, full stop. So yes, it's embedded in everything, but is it actually dramatically changing the business world? So it's definitely, I think it's creating, we're getting more creativity. I think it stimulates creativity. I use Gen AI to kind of come up, to sort of spike ideas. And I think AI in general, particularly analytical AI, helps with decision making because then you get the options. But the idea it dramatically improves productivity, I'm not taken with, because I'm quite a heavy user of AI, and I'm not finding I've got a lot of spare time. I've got no more time than I had before. Because it takes time to use this stuff and to interpret the results and work out what you're going to do.
You can see here, I pulled it up. It's a great point, because UK, and this is an AI overview as well from Office for National Statistics, Gov, and
from Google,
some good sources. But the UK employment rate in 2005 was 72.9%. In January 2025, the employment rate is 74.8%. So it's up. And I mean, that's only 2 percentage points, but you think of how many more people there are and how much more, like, those percentage points are massive. And, it's a drop of 0.6 employment rate. So that's about unemployment. So it's lower. So there's more people employed than ever before. So it's great.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important point. So when business leaders are looking for driving, because a lot of the discussions around productivity, how do we get more out of our business for less, for less cost, so we can be more profitable or invest in new things? I think the idea, and I mean, what is that Solo paradox, isn't it, or Solao paradox, that said over 50 years, all the investments in technology have had a marginal impact on gross domestic product and business productivity. Now, the point is, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, because any company that didn't do any of it probably be dead by now. But it is interesting that we invest enormous amounts without a clear roadmap to getting the benefit. We hope, we believe, we trust, but actually what we've worked out is productivity is a
Yeah,
much more nuanced thing than just
yeah.
putting in some
It's
automation.
much more complicated. Well, not complicated, but it's not as straightforward as sticking AI in or something. It's
And there's a lot of human, this is the big discussion about with AI, people talk about automation. Well, with AI, really, it's augmentation. We're augmenting human
yeah,
decision making, which is brilliant. But augmenting people isn't about
yeah.
massive job replacement.
How do you think? How do you think it's changing since AI's kind of come on the scene, since LLMs have come on the scene, and like from your experience, because you've been obviously specialized in areas like, from what I understand, like risk and compliance and all these areas. And right now at Consider Solutions, you're probably doing various other things outside of that, helping your customers. Where I don't know, are there like big trends you've seen? Not trends, areas you've seen like companies struggling with more because of this FOMO than they were before? Because I feel like, and I don't know, it's hard for me to say, Dan, because I started this in 2020. I was in various different roles before then. Like how people thought about AI, and even when I started, right? Like it wasn't until September or October 2022 people really started hammering me about Gen AI because of the LLMs, because of ChatGPT and like Perplexity in 2023 that started making waves then. And I'm always curious, like I've asked many people how that shift happened because it was all automation before then, or the big hype around RPA and intelligent automation.
Well, there was quite a lot of AI. So what I used to call predictive AI, but I think more generally is regarded as analytical AI, what you might call conventional AI and machine learning, and generative AI is machine learning as well. But let's go pre-gen AI. We have been
Yeah,
using AI for a long time. So, for example, anybody that uses social media has been subject to machine
yeah,
learning for 20 years because the algorithms that give you all that stuff that
right.
you wonder what's going on are created by machine learning algorithms with an objective function to stop you scrolling. That's the whole point. And they learn what stops you scrolling, which is wow, Elvis is alive,
Yeah,
whatever it is, or Donald Trump's grown a second head. Oh,
yeah,
whatever it is,
yeah,
people go, what, really? And that's what stops you scrolling. So that's why, and it's perfectly understandable
yeah,
why in social media the use of AI has proliferated
mm,
fake news because it's what makes you
yeah.
gasp and go,
Makes
what?
you stop being true.
So it's been going on for a long time, and of course AI as a discipline is even older than that. Um, but then when generative AI came along, what sparked the imagination is it was so
Right.
universally accessible, and it was that whole thing about um, it was the whole discussion was, it seemed to me like going back in the day when the calculator first became, people said it's kids are going to not be able to do maths. They will be unable to do maths because the calculator do it for them. Well, actually, maths is a little bit more than
Yeah.
adding and subtracting. So, and it turned out it didn't give a problem to people learning maths. And then we have generative AI comes on. People say no one's ever going to need to write again because it's going to write for you. Well, it's got an ability. It's got a savant-like ability to work out what word should come after the previous one, which is right quite a lot of the time, and it looks really good. But it's still, as we already know, it's not replacing human writing by any stretch of the imagination. Anybody who has to write for real value realizes that it isn't. There's a different thing. The human expression in writing cannot
Mm.
really be
Yeah.
replicated yet. and who knows ever, but definitely yet, can't be replicated in generative AI, partly because the learning about how
Yeah,
sentences are constructed from a vast morass of data means you're mixing things like
yeah.
Shakespearean English with English
Cockney
on
slang.
the street today, and you get some
Yeah,
unusual mixes, right? And when you read it, you go, well, no human wrote that
yeah.
unless I'm making a
It's
joke.
quite funny. You can
It's
spot
funny,
like
right?
at least well, I think most people can like you can spot when it's something's written by AI because it has a lot of semicolons in it. It has a lot of thus far. It has a lot of therefore.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It's
thereafter.
your point exactly, and it's
Words that
yeah, and
nobody
they're
ever
out of place.
uses.
Well, they're
Yeah,
not out of place, but they just seem out of place if you know what I mean. Like out of time. That's
out of time,
yeah.
or
Like
they
it
just
doesn't
seem
not
weird.
make sense
Yeah.
being in the place it is, but it's like you have to double check yourself.
But the other problem I have, and we had all this discussion for 2.5 years or
Yeah,
whatever about hallucinations. But when I see, I mean, I use generative AI as a form of conversational search. But I always, if I'm looking for anything important, which basically means business wise or financial, personal financial or business wise, I will always
yeah.
validate the sources. Because I mean, I just did, something today. I was checking something out, and the information it gave me was old information. It
No,
was
that's
it
something I don't
was
think
5
about
years old,
actually. Yeah, like
unactionable.
how if it's a financial regulation or
So I have to
something.
go
Yeah,
and check
sorry,
the
that's a very good
website.
point.
So I was looking at a
Yeah,
company's financial performance, and I thought I was getting the latest data, and I was reading that, and something didn't quite add up. But I'm getting into the habit of always checking it anyway. And then when I
yeah,
went to the real source, I realized that this data was 3 or 4 years out of date, and the real data is very different. If I had used generative AI, and this is the kind of advice to all young people coming into industry today, use generative AI as much as you like, but make sure you analyze it, you critically analyze it, you research it, you make sure it's right, and you put it in your own words. Otherwise, people are going to look at you and go, you know what? If all you're doing is that,
yeah.
I can do that
That's
myself.
a good point.
Thanks.
I really haven't thought about that. Like
So you've got to,
how the timeliness of document. Well, I mean, I'm sure I thought about it at some point, but like in that context, like especially when you're making like personal finance decision or business finance decision, if you're in the trading
yeah,
world or whatever, or
absolutely.
financial markets, like how important that is. Like if you get that data wrong, it's
Or even if you're just
yeah,
giving someone advice and you're using
yeah.
the
Well,
wrong
then you just fake
information.
news.
Yeah, we have this. I read an interesting article recently about which really resonated with me because we're in this world particularly because of AI, but we've been in this world for a while where data is king, right? The date we've got to be on the data, which is true. But the interesting thing about it is data is not reality.
Yeah,
It's a reflection of reality, but it isn't reality, right? And this article I read talked about data being a proxy, and I'll share it with you at some point. He talked about data being like a bunch of bananas. You look at a banana, and there's a banana that's ripe and ready to eat. There's one that's green you don't want to have, and there's
got it's
rotten ones
disgusting.
and all the rest of it. And he said, but each of those
Mm,
things are a stage in life, but not all of that
mm,
information is useful. And it was kind of an interesting way of looking at it. The we've got to be the argument in this article was it's not more data you want. You just want to make sure you understand what the data is and how current it is and what its relationship is to
mm.
the problem you're trying to solve. So if you want to know about if you're particularly interested in rotten bananas, that's great. But if you're looking at bananas you want to eat, there's only one type of banana you're interested
Yeah,
in. You're not interested in all the other stuff. And it's kind of interesting. I think we get we struggle with a lot of this stuff. But data, I mean, that's the whole point in generative AI. The stuff, ChatGPT and all the related ones, and Claude and all these things, they're
mm,
using data off the web, which is already getting polluted by
yeah,
generated data itself. And one of the things we've worked out internally is is from a business point of view, we don't want generative AI that crawls the web. We want it crawling
source.
trusted
Yeah,
content, trusted content about the domains we care about, and we use that. And it's our content and trusted content. So you've got the LLM ability to be a savant, a language savant. You'd be write really nicely. That's fine. But the content,
yeah.
you're sure, is good.
Or it's aligned with the kind of context you're taking and the angle that you've got, which is fine. Like it's not about being right or wrong, but like you said, making sure the accuracy's there or the context is there. That's still the massive thing with these responses and outputs you get from any sort of things. It's the context that it really can't understand.
I mean, what you don't want in a business is if you've got somebody getting into business and let's say they're involved in a product launch in consumer goods, and they do some stuff and they make a recommendation, they put a plan, they spend tens of millions of dollars of advertising and promotion, and then they find they've done the wrong thing, and then they track it back and they say that base information wasn't right, and somebody goes, oh well, that's what GPT said. And the funny thing is, before generative AI, we had some discussions internally. We've been doing machine learning, other forms of AI for quite a while, and we had an internal conversation where I looked at some of the insights generated at one point, and I looked at it, I said, that's not right. That doesn't make sense to me. That can't be right. And the guys said, no, that is absolutely right. I can guarantee it's right. It's 99.99999% right. I said, no, it just doesn't make. Let me explain. I explained the situation. That is not correct. And they came back and said, well, but that's what the algorithm says. I said, I understand it's what the algorithm says, but the algorithm's wrong. And they looked at me, and that's the kind of conversation we're having. It's happening again. Like, it doesn't help if it's doing what it's meant to do, if what it's meant to do isn't helpful.
Well, it's bizarre. Like, what is it? This story here, like about how serious, well, not serious, but I'll share this quickly. This article on a lawyer, so like using it for a response in the court, and this is quite a while ago. Like this is, and you wonder when it's happening, and like what's happening. Oh, it's giving me a continue not supporting this, but like saying like how to use AI in their court appearance and everything, and it just shows like it's crazy, like how someone's got away with it or tried to get away with it, and they've actually been disbarred and not allowed to use it. So it's it's a pretty wild time, Dan. Like all these different examples of what can and can't happen, and to your point, like the context and using things, it's it's crazy.
And legal is a great example because that's one of the examples people give as a business which is going to be decimated by generative AI. But the problem is that in the practice of law, getting the facts right is pretty important. It's not enough just to say, "Oh, I thought it was okay." It's not the way the world works. It's kind of interesting. And also when you look at what the law is, it isn't just writing things down. People hire lawyers for more reasons than just getting a document written.
Yeah, exactly. And they use it for I don't know, I wasn't properly loading, but they use it for different reasons. And I guess the question I was going to ask earlier as well, that I want to ask you, Dan, like, do you ever think around data and like using these applications, right? Like using these different tools, can like I always think like there's a time and place for using data, but also there's something about us, right? Like we can trust our gut instinct, and it's very interesting, like how oh god, I've lost you. How a gut instinct can change things. You still there? I'm back. I don't know what.
Yeah, you dropped out somehow.
I don't know. Well, clearly the article I was trying to pull up from Reuters froze us out, but we're still going. So I'll edit it quickly. But yeah, my point was, like, how do you see all that? Like from a business perspective, I'm purely curious. I know it's changing gears from what it kind of matches to what we were saying, but like there is a power in like not always listening to the data, right? Like listening to predictive analytics because you know what that person says. Like if someone was to tell me something about a close friend and I know them very well and they're saying something that wasn't true, I'd be like, no, I know that person. Like I know that situation. Or if I was to tell you about a deal, I'm making this up, but about a deal or something you're heavily involved in, and I was saying, Dan, this doesn't make sense, you'd be like, bullshit, because I know X, Y, Z. And I always find that divide really interesting.
I think that's a great point, and it relates to my perspective that data isn't the new oil, it isn't gold, it isn't all these things. It's very important, but it isn't reality. It's a reflection of reality. And there's a lovely image I've got, which is a nice, ripe apple in front of a mirror.
Yeah.
And the image in the mirror is a beautifully shiny apple. but the back of the apple facing the viewer had a big mouthful taken out of it. So it's an apple you couldn't sell to anybody,
Yeah.
but when you look in the mirror, it's beautiful
Yeah.
because you're only seeing half of it. And I think that's a lot true with data. So you have to be also one of the reasons why people will not be eliminated from jobs wholesale is because even with the best data and with the best algorithms and the best automation and the best probabilistic, all that stuff, there's still judgments you got to make about which come through relationships. They come through non-digitized information. So not everything is digitized and not everything will ever be digitized. There's a lot of things that happen that you make decisions on which are not digital. So even with the best data, even if we get as close as possible to AGI, this artificial general intelligence, it still won't be intelligence because there's things that you can't digitize.
Yeah.
So your point is a really good one in that you still have to make judgments based on your experience, your opinion, and even the trust you have in individuals. Like in that, I'm prepared to trust that information from that person I will weigh higher than the information from that person. But a different person may weigh those differently.
Yeah.
So it becomes very, very specific.
Yeah, it's like how to blend.
And the people who make good decisions tend to have a good way of making that weighting.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And the people who make bad decisions tend to just believe the last thing people told them.
Yeah, it's like that's a really good point. Like it's like AI can't make, like, some people are just born to be entrepreneurs and run businesses, right? And some people just aren't. Like, and it's so well, some people are born to be professional sports stars. Some are born to be professional singers, whatever. Like professional experts on mineral mining. You know what I mean?
I mean, you mentioned Henry Ford earlier about the car. If Henry Ford had all the available data in whatever 1912, whatever it was, had all the available data, what's the argument? The customers wanted a faster horse.
Yeah.
But they wanted something. They wanted people to clean up all the horse shit in the streets because that was causing a problem. And they predicted that in 20 years' time, all of the streets of New York and London would be 12 foot deep, and you wouldn't be able to walk through because it would just be the remains of the horse shit, basically.
Yeah. That's a weird. That's a really good point.
And that would be in data, right? The data would have told you that.
Yeah.
The data would have said we must get more people cleaning the streets.
Yeah. So how do you kind of change that thinking, Dan? From because obviously what he did with Ford, and I guess what you're seeing with Musk with SpaceX, and there's various like Salesforce.
And Steve Jobs did it with.
Yeah.
He said all of the the wonders of iPhones, all this bit, it wasn't really all. He wasn't a first mover in that either, but he did know that if you ask people what they want, sometimes you don't want to rely on the data. Sometimes you've got to rely on your inspiration and intuition.
Yeah.
Because data, in those cases, the data didn't help. The data would have told you to do something else.
Yeah. Well, that's what the point I was getting to. So how would you approach that situation, Dan? Like in that situation, and especially with Steve Jobs' example, and also with Mark Benioff, pioneered SaaS, and in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinion from Siegel and everything, or whatever the company is called. How do you approach it in that situation to think, okay, it's not the data, because as you said, that would have led to piled up roads full of shit for the horse and carriage, but how to approach it and say there's got to be a new model, and I think that's what we're bad at fixing ourselves in.
No, I think it's a really interesting point you raised, because it actually touches on something we spend a lot of time with our customers on, which is the problems that we're talking about all occur. This preoccupation with AI being the silver bullet, the preoccupation on data, the preoccupation on kind of following the algorithms at all times are based on the fact we tend to look at very small problems. Yeah. We tend to look at very narrow things. And the answer is to zoom out. You've got to zoom. And I think the best entrepreneurs, the best decision makers, the best business people have all developed this quality to be able to, whatever the problem is you're looking at, go, okay, I don't want to look at that anymore. I want to get up above it. I want to take a helicopter view. What goes on upstream and downstream of that? What goes on around it? What's the context? And then take a 50,000 foot view, and then you go, you know what? Horses aren't the answer. However fast a horse is, that isn't going to solve the problem. Yeah. But that's how you get to that conclusion. But if all you do is look at the small atomic tasks of how do I get, how do I get down the street or whatever, then people kind of, we tend to focus just on a very small set of possible answers.
Yeah. Yeah, you
And I
don't.
think zooming out, looking end to end about how does this business work, how does this world work if you're in science, what does the problem domain look like, but not just a little bit that you started looking at. You've got to look significantly left and significantly right of it.
Yeah.
Work out what are the effects, what's the cause of this set of activities, what's the effect of it, and downstream, a bit more cause and effect downstream, and see, and where's the benefit to society or the business or the customer or whatever.
Yeah. And that goes back to our point earlier, like to work back from the problem that people are facing. And it's really interesting. Like I know this isn't necessarily related to AI, but I was saying this earlier to Zara, who advises a lot of boards and is at a lot of roundtables at the House of Lords quite regularly about regulation and AI for good and all those kind of important topics. And it comes to my mind, like when you're talking about these things, and you'll probably know this feeling. Tell me if you've got know this feeling, Dan. You can tell when someone's passionate about what they're building, right, and about what they're designing and what they're making. And I think it's similar to that kind of get rich quick scheme, and they never work because you're going up against people that are fully devoted to what they're building, like they're committed. And I don't know, and I'm seeing it a lot now with these AI players, like use AI and it'll make you an expert in X, Y, Z. And it's just like I look at it and just like that's a load of shit. Like I don't understand how. Fair enough, it might help you find your passion if you're still a young or you're switching lanes, whatever. Like it's never too old to find a new passion. That I strongly agree with. But to think you're going to compete against someone that would do it for free, like they love that topic because you've got a bit of AI and the data says you should. It's just those kind of things, no agent, no AI, no thing would be able to tell you. And you can tell, like the people I love buying from, Dan, or the people I love working with, people I love going out with, or whatever, even friends, even if I don't agree with their views, up to a point, it's they're the people I like to hang around with because you can tell they just generally have a passion or like to work with because it's just like you can just tell they're obsessed.
And also, people with views that are different to yours, people whose view of the data is different to yours, are actually interesting people to talk to.
Yes.
So coming back to the data thing, if all we did is speak to people who've got the same data as us,
Yeah.
it's a very boring conversation.
Yeah.
So then you argue that if all we're doing is all using the same bit of AI on the same body of data, that's going to be boring as well. There's going to be no insight.
Yeah.
So where's the competitive differentiator going to come from? It's going to come from people thinking outside the box, zooming out, looking at a bigger picture. And that's both business-wise, but it's also, as you say, personally and socially. You don't just want to be kind of having a conversation where everyone agrees with each other. I mean, that's just pointless.
That would drive me insane.
You want to get you want to get a bit of spark.
Yeah, well, it's how relationships start, right? Can you imagine if every time, like, your friends agree with you, or people I know that have a partner that they're agreeing with all the time, they'd be like, "This is it." No, like, you wouldn't want to be with them, I'd imagine.
Well, I think anybody that agrees with you all the time is lying.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it like makes you superstitious. Like, what aren't you telling me? Like, it's a good point around how like businesses run and like what it does, and I guess like the social aspect, like the social economics of it all, like how it'll affect things. Like I'm seeing it a lot with literally today. I don't know if you've seen, Dan, but it's been covered on BBC News, the Guardian, and loads of places have covered it. And it's been signed by like Coldplay, Elton John, Dua Lipa, all these people, and it's about using their work in creativity.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know. Do you have any views on that, or like how you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? So if you go into it's a really interesting problem. So you go into a store and you pick up a bar of chocolate and walk out with it and eat it. It's whatever it is, it's a pound or something, £2. And you're officially guilty of theft.
Yeah.
But if you train a model on what is hundreds of millions of dollars worth of intellectual property,
Yeah.
not like really. How does that work? So I mean, there's
really
definitely
look at it. It's a good analogy.
yeah. I mean, it's complete nonsense, right? So, but the people have so far they've got because it's in the pursuit of the advance of technology. a lot of organizations got away with a lot of stuff. It's going to get locked down. And the funny thing is that I mean, there's two problems with it. So one is, I think the technology vendors who are scraping copyright content into their models are going to get stopped. But worse still is the users of those tools are going to take some information they got from that model, use it publicly, and then get sued.
Yeah.
Because no, you can't do that, it's mine. And the lawsuit will be with them because you published it.
Yeah.
You found it, but you published it somehow. So it's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
And then you have to be very, very careful
how to use it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me
But I
think.
think it's right that you can't, I think copyright, I can't remember what it is. I think it dies after 100 years. I think you can regurgitate the words of Shakespeare and don't have to pay anybody any money.
Yeah, it's fair
But
use.
if it's somebody today,
Yeah.
if you don't accredit them,
Yeah.
it's a different thing.
Well, yeah, it's like on YouTube with copyright and stuff, and the big producers will say like you can use up to like 7 seconds, I think, and then it's fair use. So you can use like a clip or something or a video, and you'll get no prosecution. You won't be demonetized. But anything past that, you'll start.
And then you had that Ed Sheeran lawsuit where they said that the bass line in one of his songs was, whatever it was, some guy from the 60s.
Yeah.
And then he goes, well, the thing is, there's only so many progressions, there's only so many chords. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So, like, and it sounds nothing. I mean, if you've listened, I remember that lawsuit was the end of 2023 or something, and it sounded nothing like maybe at the very start, but it's it's interesting the way it's going, and I think the fact, like, I look at it from a media perspective, and we produce a lot of content. Just how much content is being produced every single day. Like, it's how to put a framework around that stuff. By my opinion, people in government aren't all. I mean, they can lean on a lot of helpful people, but they're not always necessarily the right people. And it's a bit of a bold claim to be making those laws. In my honest opinion, that's not saying it's right or wrong. And it's how to put regulations about things that are just excessively growing every single day. Like, you look at how much data there is every single day. How you can try and tame that beast is, I don't know.
I mean, what's interesting is that might actually be a gating factor on the application of AI. Because if we get to the point that so much data across the web and in all these models we're using, when a significant percentage of that data becomes copyright, is somebody's property, then we're going to have to be very careful. Like we already talked about earlier about validating when you do a chat GPT prompt, you've got to validate the answers and make sure you're right. It's going to be even worse because then you have to say, not only is it right, I've got to make sure this is actually publicly usable information. And you might find it becomes economically preferable to do it from first principles rather than use AI, which is crazy, right?
Yeah, that's a very interesting view. What if someone's like first principles?
I mean, you never know, but
yeah, like that's what I was saying earlier. Like, how do you is there right or wrong ways of what values people hold? Like, and trying to apply that, someone was trying to apply that to AI, and it's a bit of a deep question. But I was like, look, they might not have bad values, they might just have different values to you. And it's like, how do you try and apply a one rule fits all? Like, you might have the value of like how you connect with your family and friends might be very different how I connect with them. Like, I might prefer to go on trips to the cinema. You might prefer to go on walks. I don't know. I'm making it up, but you know what I mean. Like, it's different.
No, completely. And the values thing is very tricky because at one level, we are educated to be very sort of recognize everyone has their own opinions, that's fine.
Yeah.
And they've got their own value systems, and because that comes from religion, from background, from all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But then at some point, there's things that say, no, that's a bit too far. I can't allow that.
Yeah.
Well, who makes that judgment, right? I don't know. Who makes a judgment? No, that's a little bit too far. Well, that was okay.
Yeah.
Different views up to this point are okay, but it's not okay there. It's very, very tricky.
Yeah, and to try and apply that.
I mean, there was a bit of news over the weekend about the British government, or some call for governments everywhere to stop all these gifts, these expensive gifts every time somebody from another country comes to visit a political leader, they come up with a big gift. I mean, there's a thing now that Trump is being given a executive jet by the government of Qatar as a gift. And when he's out of power, it goes to his library. So it's definitely a gift for him. Well, yeah, people can give what they want. But the point about it is, they were saying, right, we've got to stop this gifts thing because it's completely wrong. There should be no gifts. And then you go, well, hang on a second. I agree with that up to a point. But in some cultures, the giving and receiving of gifts is a critical part of the culture. And it is extremely unpleasant to refuse somebody's little gift.
Yeah.
So then you've got to say, okay, so maybe accepting gifts isn't a problem, but maybe there should be a value. Maybe, it gets complicated.
Yeah.
Life is nuanced, sadly. Or maybe not sadly, maybe it's good news.
Yeah. Well, it's a really true thing. Like, how do you, similar to the things you mentioned, like whether it's religion or local cultures, right through to global movements. Like, if you go somewhere like completely different, your point exactly, like how they respond is completely different, and you're trying to put technology on that, and you're trying to tell them how they can and can't use it, and some people will just use it because someone's telling them not to use it. It's like a naughty school child. It's like, you tell me not to do it, so I'm going to do it. Like, it's a very, it does make you think, like, how can you, and I think that's part of the reason, I don't know if you've got a view on this, Dan, but part of the reason why the US is getting so far ahead. I mean, I'm telling you about it, like, you've given me some great recommendations for Porto, for food and everything, which is a beautiful city, but their points were just, half of them, I'd say it's about 50-50 from what I heard. I couldn't catch all the conversations. Half of them were saying, EU's doing great. It's not as bad as a picture as what people are painting. And the other half were saying, how the hell are we ever supposed to compete with China and with America and places like that, when they were full well telling me companies that were taking a year to get a term sheet for investment? It's like a year. Like, God knows how many customers you've lost by that point, or you don't have the revenue to keep the pipeline open, or to run a POC, or proof of concept or whatever. It's a very interesting point.
No, it is tricky, and then you also get into cause and effect.
Yeah.
So is the cause because of the European legislations, which is what some people would argue, or is the cause the fact that in the US you have 350 million people all speaking the same language as a single market? It's the best place to launch a business. That's just maths, right?
Mm.
Whereas in Europe, it's not quite the same because you've got a lot of big cultural differences and language barriers.
Yeah.
So so people might want to use a correlation to say that, well, it's to do with regulation,
Right.
but that may or may not be true.
Yeah.
It could be with someone else.
Yeah. Do you have like a viewpoint at the moment, like what's happening with all the investment, well, not investment, but like companies you're seeing come out of Europe compared to America, or trends you're seeing with like, I don't know, take that question however you want. It's not a best question, but
I mean, I think there's a lot of great innovation in
yeah.
Europe. I mean, certainly in the UK, in Berlin, there's a massive tech innovation sort of hub in Berlin.
Mm.
In other parts of Europe, I mean, there's stuff going on in Portugal, there's stuff going on in France. I think I think there's quite a bit of a tech hub in Barcelona as well.
Mm.
But I think the big right now, I think if you spoke to the private equity and venture capital folks, I think they'd say the big places in Europe are Berlin and London. I might be wrong, but I think that's the message I get.
Yeah, Germany's
There's a
full of
lot of great stuff coming out of them. And then the only issue is, and some of the comments I have heard as well. So we had two possible reasons: we had regulation and then size of market.
Mm.
The other thing is that Europeans are generally less gung ho when they get an idea. However passionate they are about it,
Yeah.
they might be less all in.
Yeah.
Whereas in the US, it's much more. I mean, the idea of failing and starting again is quite acceptable in the US. In certain parts of Europe, people don't like. People are still very touchy about they don't want to fail.
Yeah, it's
Rather not succeed
yeah.
than fail.
It's a very weird mindset, that, to be honest. Like, I've failed loads, and you just think, and I'm still probably, I've got my biggest failures ahead of me, probably.
I enjoy the failures.
Yeah.
They give you the best laughs.
What's if you're comfortable to share, what's one of the biggest failures you've learned from, or like across?
I worked for a big US company, and we built a piece of technology for the telecoms industry to do with billing and all that stuff, and it was pretty cool. And I was kind of convinced. I thought there was a kind of a time window where it was going to be, really big opportunity, but then I thought it would kind of even out.
Yeah.
And there was that general, and I hadn't read this at the time, but there was a general kind of cognitive bias that we tend to overestimate what will happen in the short term and underestimate how long it lasts. So this company was taken over, and the new CEO of the new company told me, get rid of that thing. We don't do that. And I went, it's really cool. Look at this. We've got these big companies. They're doing it. So get rid of it. We don't do it. And he said, if you want to, you can take it and go if you want. Yeah. But I'm not having that in my company. You can take it and leave. Take the people. I don't care. And I went, okay, I'm going to learn a lot from this guy, because he was a character for sure.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff I learned was things you don't want to do, but that's a separate topic. But I had to arrange to get this bit of the business sold off to a small group of people who formed the company. And within 3 years, it was listed on the London AIM stock market, and it reached a peak valuation of £1 billion. And I gave it away. But it's funny. It's absolutely. I didn't give it away because it wasn't mine. But he said I could have it, but also just get rid of it. I don't want you wasting your time. We've got to focus on this stuff.
Yeah. How did it feel? Like looking.
At the time, I thought it was. I kind of laughed about it then. I kind of felt, and I often asked myself, would I know what I know now? Would I have made a different decision? And I actually wouldn't have. It sounds weird, but it's kind of. Sometimes it's nice to observe stuff, and I learned an awful lot of stuff on the way.
Yeah.
And I learned some stuff through that. And one of the big things I learned was, don't assume that a market opportunity is a short thing. It's got a very long tail.
Yeah.
And this thing, that I think it's now been gone through a couple of owners. That software is still being used by telecoms companies around the world.
Wow. That's kind of like a blessing to be given that, right, Dan? In a good, look at it anyway, but you think that's a very tough lesson to learn. I get, not a tough lesson, but something hard to watch and see, but it probably gave you a lot of wisdom and strategic thinking I'm going to watch out for that.
And I didn't lose anything personally. The only thing I lost was a bit of pride, thinking, did I make a bad decision? And people say to me, why did you let it go? And I said, well, because I had to decide whether I was going to take it off myself.
Yeah.
And start a business. I'd never run a business. I'd always been doing stuff within a corporation.
Yeah.
I'd never run a business, and I just thought, I don't think I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
And now I might have been, I might not have been. Doesn't really matter. But my evaluation was that I didn't think that was something that I was. If I'd been American, I probably would have. I probably would have had a bit more get up and go. Would have just done it.
Yeah, that's an interesting contrast. It is interesting, like how easy it was to start a business in the UK for one, like how quick you can get set up with fintechs and Revolut and all these things that make you don't have to I literally had a bank within the hour. I think it was literally approved in the hour, and it makes me think. I'm going a little off track, but it makes me think. You look at companies in the US, and we deal a lot with the US. They are just so prone to think, and someone said it at the conference in Porto, they just have big balls. They just love taking risks. Like the EU, it's just, they've got to weigh up every decision and think about it. And I wish more people that I know in the London area, there are some examples, but as a general consensus, and had more people backing them, more investment groups ready to throw money at it and ready to think, we're going to, give it a whack, give it a go.
But it's interesting, though. It's the difference between good ideas and executing too fast.
Yeah.
So I read this really interesting. It was a little bit weird, but I read this interesting report, IBM report, CEO report last week, the latest one. And one of the things it argued was, you remember there used to be a phrase about move fast and break things.
Yeah.
Break things. What they were saying is, no, what CEOs want, they want to move fast but don't break anything, which is a bit like an oxymoron, right? Doesn't make any sense. If the goal is don't break anything, you're going to move very, very slowly. If you're going to move fast, you're going to break stuff. So it's just a kind of pointless thing to say. And I don't think it was said in humor, which was sad.
Yeah.
But I think, you're seeing in the US, for example, the Doge idea actually is, whatever your political opinions,
Mm.
the Doge idea wasn't a bad idea. The
Oh, it's
big
good.
big democracies, governments are bloated,
Yeah.
but the execution was a bit, you know,
Yeah. Bit naff the way they did
kind of
things.
a bit thoughtless, really. And so sometimes it does make sense to have you've got to have a bias for execution. You've got to be focused on getting stuff done,
Yeah.
but you do have to think through what the implications are, because sometimes getting it wrong
Yeah.
is not great.
Or executing fastly without consulting the right people can lead to people
Yeah,
thinking,
yeah,
fuck that,
exactly.
using it.
And the thing that this is the whole point, that there is nothing is when it's, everything is kind of nuanced, as we talked before. It's not, you've got to make a decision,
Yeah.
and decisions are complicated,
Yeah.
and you have to stand by the one you make
Yeah.
in general,
Yeah.
unless you walk away from all the time, but you've got to stand by it.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the group called Rocket Internet?
I have, yes. I don't know
Yeah.
how
They're the German, they're like a VC accelerator fund, like
I have heard of, yeah, I know, yeah, yeah,
Y
yeah,
Combinator, and they're
yeah.
brilliant. All they do is copy, all they do is copy American brands that are doing really well and apply it to the EU. And they've made an absolute killing because they just literally like they identified like Zappos, so they emulated that. They emulated brands like Airbnb. Kind of Airbnb were one of the few that they couldn't emulate, I think. And I mean, they've been around for like 10, 11, 12 years. And where I was thinking that to your point is just how they went with an approach, like instead of trying to create something new, it's like using that to your point around like a good plan and execution. They were just lifting something. And I've always thought like that's a very interesting business model. And I wonder what they're going to copy next with like
Well,
AI startups and stuff.
yeah. I mean, that is interesting. I mean, like we said earlier, first mover advantage doesn't really exist. So seeing, that's been done throughout history.
Yeah.
People see somebody's had a go at it. I can replicate that, but do it better.
Yeah.
So DoorDash of the US have just bought Deliveroo in the UK,
Have they?
and or certainly just been approved, whether they've actually executed it or not.
Yeah.
But the point is, you say, why did you bother buy that? You've got the same technology. Why didn't you just do it? Well, ironically, what they say is it isn't very easy to launch one of those things. Once you've got hold of a geographic area,
Yeah.
you've got a bit of in, and it's very difficult for a competitor to get in. So they
Yeah.
had to buy them rather than try and launch here independently. Kind of interesting, right? You'd assume with the wonders of technology, you can just replace things. But it's human behavior, because ultimately, it's humans that are buying stuff.
Yeah.
This is where the whole story falls apart. Even in a kind of an AI dominated world, AI doesn't need to buy anything. People need to buy stuff.
Yeah. People need to buy it. That's
We
the
need to buy stuff. We got to work out what we do with it.
yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
2.9 billion. That's not shabby.
Yeah, look at that. Near £66 million payday for some of its staff.
No, that's a happy birthday, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. The food delivery app has agreed to be taken over by US giant DoorDash in a deal valuing the business at 2.9 billion in 40 countries. That's such a good point that you're making, Dan, because it's I think people sometimes forget about that. It's why certain companies and certain brands don't take off. And like my view at the moment, like I really don't like. I use them. Like I'm going to a wedding in a few weeks, and we're using Airbnb because it's like
Yeah.
8 of us going or whatever. But if I travel for work, I will like in most times I'm traveling for work, I will avoid Airbnb. Like I won't use it because I just think I want my breakfast served for me. I don't want to have a cleaning charge, this charge, that charge. And I think
But I don't want to run the risk. I don't want to run the risk of getting a dodgy one. So
exactly, exactly.
I've had quite a few Airbnbs, and I've had a couple of dodgy ones, and it's really, if you're on holiday, it's upsetting,
Yeah,
and you have to get out and the rest of it. If you're on business, it can seriously get in the way, like if the Wi-Fi doesn't work or whatever. At least with a hotel brand, well, you know with a hotel, a well-known hotel, it's going to have all the bits and bobs that you need if you're working.
if you're with like a Hilton or IHG brand or something. And my point was to that, like how you're saying, like you sometimes don't with that model exactly, like they've probably misunderstood like how certain countries run, and like I mean, you had all the wave of people trying to ban that sort of business, like people in Barcelona, because people were buying houses. They just stick
Yeah.
on Airbnb.
Well,
They're like, no,
they tried to buy it in New York City. I remember getting an Airbnb in Manhattan about 10 years ago. And part of the thing was you couldn't tell anybody you had to tell any neighbours who spoke to you, you got to tell them you're a friend. It was like
Really?
that. Because actually, and they because people who are having a holiday break
Yeah,
in a residential area behave differently to people who are working.
yeah,
Because they can go to bed late, they don't have to get up for work.
yeah,
So it's kind of interesting, and that's why. And I don't know what's happened now because I haven't done anything there for a while. But it's interesting that there's a lot of resistance to some of those things, and sometimes it's understandable, and sometimes it's not. But
yeah. Do you
yeah,
think, knowing and wrap up, I want to be respectful of your time as well, so wrap up soon. Wanted to ask, like, with the business you're running with Consider Solutions and what you've seen, like, with digital transformation, and I'm aware, and maybe you can correct me if I get this wrong, but like with financial control compliance, like you've got SAP and that are obviously big dogs in that area. I'm just using them as an example, ADP, whatever, all big payment processing tools and procurement. But and that's just to relate it to something you might know that you'll know better than me. But with digital transformation, like you were talking about agentic, we were talking about agentic, and we were talking about how people are misusing AI uses or whether automation can do it, and just general common logic of like understanding a situation. Do you think there's a trend, a shift that's happening, and apply it to any market you want, but with like digital transformation is quite a loaded word. Like to me, when
yeah,
someone says
yeah,
digital
yeah,
transformation,
yeah.
it's like what are you trying to do? You're trying to retool your tech stack. You're trying to upskill people. You're trying to optimize your spend budgets
Mhm,
on tools
mhm.
as basic as Slack up to I don't
Okay.
know whatever. But yeah, take from that what you will. Like, how do you see it shifting with all these new tools and people trying to make themselves more
Well,
literature as a business?
I mean, it ties right back into the AI discussion. So digital transformation used to mean we're putting in a new ERP system, like a new SAP or S4HANA, one of these things, and um, then it was about RPA, and now it's all about AI. But the key point is that what people struggle with, or maybe they don't struggle with it, but what we need to spend more time worrying about is what is the business process we're trying to transform? We're not putting in new technology for the hell of it. Are we trying to improve the way we sell stuff? Are we trying to improve our revenue cycle? We're trying to improve how we build our products, how we distribute our products, what is the company that's doing the digital transformation trying to achieve? And a lot of the time, they're not really very clear
Yeah,
because the technologists say, and there's loads of examples of this, you get the latest new ERP system from SAP or whoever, it doesn't really matter. It's going to enable you to do all these things. You'll be AI enabled. You're going to be dramatic productivity improvements, better interaction with customers. People spend hundreds of millions of pounds, dollars, or euros implementing these things.
mm.
And at the end, they go, so nothing's really changed, right? Go, no, but now you have a platform to do all that. So I didn't get that with the $900 million I spent. No, no, now you're able to do it.
Mm,
Haven't I done that before?
mm.
Well, maybe. And so you get this whole thing about what are you actually investing in? Are you investing in a technology platform? Or are you investing in changing a business? And frankly, you're better off investing in changing your business and changing a technology platform unless you're in the business of selling technology platforms.
Yeah,
It comes back to what your strategy is, right? If you're selling, I don't know, if you're a clothing brand or you're selling, you're selling biscuits, whatever it is,
yeah,
your business is how do I get more biscuits or more clothes to our target market as quickly and effectively as possible and get profitable customers and everyone's good, right? That's what you're trying to work out. You're not trying to work out how many different technologies you can use.
yeah. That's a good point. Like you're not trying to measure up. Yeah, how it goes back to our point. Like you're trying to get to the problem you can solve again. Like what is it you need to solve? Do you think there's a time where people are not investing in the right areas? Like they're not in. Let me just explain. Like they're not investing in the people to be digitally literature, or they're not like I know businesses, and you're like, how the hell are they still running? Like it's like you look at them and it's like if you brought me even in as like a consultant or employee, I'd be like banging my head against the wall. Like, and I had it in an engineering job and great company, like worked with some of the biggest companies, and they were so forward thinking and like, and it was physical engineering, right, Dan? So it was like making big conveyor units and
Yeah, yeah.
car doors for JLR and stuff, like the components with Fanuc and the Staubli for little biscuit pickers, and you just think all of that was so fast forward, and then some things on the back end, it's like how are you making all this money and you still got this kind of process? I don't know. Like, do you think that's
Well, it is.
weird mixed up?
I mean, it is interesting as well. Is you look at some businesses, and again, you've got when you're doing if you're doing a transformation,
Mm.
if any business doing transformation, you've got to work out what are you selling to what customers through what channels, and how do you maximize the appeal of it, maximize the profitability of it, maximize the customer experience, all and the loyalty and all that stuff,
Mm.
and all of the supply chain stuff you need to do. You need to work that out. And sometimes you realize that maybe we can have artisans at the back doing it by hand. Maybe it doesn't matter. So, for example, if you're a really high-end brand, luxury clothing brand,
Yeah.
it's actually part of your value proposition that the clothes are handmade.
Yeah.
Not made by machinery. No, they're made by actual people who are experts, and they live in Italy, and they have beautiful Italian silk, and they make it themselves. And you've got to pay £1,000 to have one. You go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that's funny, isn't it? Because the kind of the most prestige brands in our world we live in are all focused on, how, most of them are focused on how beautifully engineered they are by humans and human intelligence and human creativity.
Yeah, the human touch.
There's not many people trying to sell high-priced premium brands on the basis it's all automated and we can knock them out really easily. It doesn't really play. You go, well, if it's that easy, why not just sell it for 50 quid?
That was a really good point. Like for some reason, like my mind initially went to like what my dad's business sells, which is like Mayer and like Brule and like really specific brands for like German, like it's all properly hand stitched and made and stuff, and like proper suits and stuff. But my other thought goes to like cars and stuff, like the high end cars that sell for loads. The reason they're expensive is because a lot of them have handmade touches, like they
Oh
put
God, yeah.
the signature on the
And
Bentley or whatever.
the car seats are covered in the skin of a llama that you only find at the top of the Himalayas. And they cost £100,000 each to get.
Yeah, to source it in. Yeah, it's
It's bizarre, really, when you think about it. But
yeah, it's like
that's humans for you.
yeah, yeah. It's like you were saying. Like it reminded me of the suggestions you were giving me for Portugal and like for food and stuff. Like I don't know about you, Dan, but if I go to McDonald's, it's cheap and it's very fast and a kiosk service. But if I'm spending, I don't know, if I've gone to like Tom Shepherd's or gone to another restaurant that's Michelin star or maybe quite
Yeah,
close
yeah.
to it, you don't want to be rushed. You want the wine, you want the menu, you want this. It's like, and yeah,
And you want somebody coming to your table who's
yes,
knowledgeable and got good style. You don't just want to be given an iPad
yeah,
that tells you what it thinks you probably want to eat.
yeah. I'd be pissed.
Can you imagine that? Go to a restaurant, a high-end restaurant, and say, no, you'll want this. This is what we've ordered this for you. The agentic AI has ordered this, cooked it for you. And they go, I don't want that.
Yeah,
No, but it's fine. It's AI. That's what the algorithm said.
thanks, I'm off. I don't know how I'd respond. But like, what the fuck?
But if it was a very low cost restaurant,
Yeah,
like a fast food, and it said for £3, these are the things we have, and it's all high quality, all the rest of it, but you can get a meal for £3, but you can't predict exactly what it is. A lot of people go for that.
I'd probably go for that. Yeah.
No. So it's interesting. So therefore, you can have an AI based on what you have in the kitchen and what's available and what the tastes are. You can have based on because things are changing all the time in terms of the resources you have. So you pay your £3 and you get this thing. Now that could be quite a cool little idea, but you say you've got to make sure you like fish and chicken and beef because it's going to be any one of them, right?
Yeah.
But you wouldn't want that to go to your Michelin star restaurant and just turn up there and then the food turns up and you're all done in 15 minutes. You go, what?
Yeah, you want the whole experience, like 7 calls, however long
I want to
it
be
is.
there for 3.5 hours.
Yeah, and all the wine tasting selections, like pairs of meats and stuff. It's would you like? I could guess like a Flatiron. Have you ever been to Flatiron in London? I'm sure you have. Like the steak little place, and all it does
Which
is
one?
it's called
Which one?
Flatiron. Like they've got a few of
Oh, yes,
them.
no, sorry, have been there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
and
that's
like
cool.
Hawksmoor's like a step up from it.
Yeah,
Uh,
Hawksmoor's right. Yeah.
Hawksmoor's good.
And funny enough, the um, Gaucho used to be really good, but most of them closed down now.
Yeah,
That's interesting. They were really good. The Argentinian steakhouse, that's mostly closed down. And then they brought STK in from New York, which there's a couple in London, but they haven't done so well.
Yeah.
So it's still Hawksmoor and Flatiron.
Yeah.
Those are the Hawksmoor's a high end, and Flatiron, and then there's some sort of non-chain ones around as well.
Yeah, there was one. I mean, I think I still preferred Hawksmoor, but I forget where it was. My brother works around that area, lives in Boston Manor. And when I first moved to London, he was just, because I had no money, like my first job, like everything was going on rent. He was just occasionally treat me to all these different steak places.
That's amazing. How cool is that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. Like, showed me my first flat iron. He's like 12 years older than me, so he'd done really well in the property sector. And I was just like, wow, like all this stuff exists. And I was gonna say, like, I think Hawksmoor, I would hate that if they came up to me and said, oh, because it's like nice, right? Like you can order off the board, you can split a kilo of meat, and if they were going flat iron, I'd probably be okay because it's more tailored towards fast eaters. I'd probably be okay at that price point, 15 quid or whatever it is, to think, yeah, I'll order it off an iPad. But that's a really good point you made, like how people's perceptions and like what, even though the data might tell you that's a better option, like anyone going to the restaurants will tell you that's not the better option.
No, it's funny. So the idea that there's one approach to assessing data and probabilities and serving up the answer, we know from a human point of view, that's a dangerous game.
Yeah.
But you've got to have a bit more. You've got to have a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
And that human element, I think, is really interesting. Even sometimes it's just a human element behind the brand, but sometimes it's human element of the customer experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the importance of the human in the loop, right? That's what we were saying on our first call.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, it's been fun, Dan French, and I'm excited to talk to you again. I'm glad we got connected. And before we finish, anything you want to leave the audience with, or final thoughts on trends, direction, things to think about going forward before we talk again? Maybe we'll talk. We'll do one while we're both in Portugal or somewhere else, Sonny, at the back of the conference.
Well, I think the most important trend that you've already established is there's some great fish barbecues.
Yeah.
On the harbour wall, they just all line the street and they're grilling all day, and you go and sit there, you choose which one you go to. It's amazing value, it's wonderful food, you get great wine.
Yeah,
what could be more important than that? And by the way, I can't even remember, I think they do take Apple Pay.
Oh, yeah.
But that's about the maximum digitization they've got.
Yeah.
There's no AI involved. There's a lot of HI,
Yeah.
human intelligence, but not a lot of AI.
Yeah. Well, like I got caught out in Marrakesh or in Morocco, and every time I said, they just kept saying one quote to me. Like, I forgot it once or twice, but I always managed to sort it out because I had a bit of cash. But I'd always go to pay with Apple Pay, and they were like, "My friend, this is Africa. Like, there's no thing." And I was just like, they kept saying it, like in the 3 different cities we went to, and it's I feel like some places are just never gonna want to adopt it, like changes things. But yeah.
Well,
It's a lot of
anyway,
fun, man.
great. Thank you so much, Tom. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having you on again, and I'll put all those things in the show notes, and appreciate you having on, man. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of helpful conversations.
Thanks very much.
Awesome.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.